Hey everybody, Dylan Bowman here, one of the founders of Freetrail and the host of the Freetrail podcast. Thank you for watching our video podcast. A couple of things before we get started. Number one, please do join Freetrail Pro, our great community for trail runners from around the world. There's a lot of great perks involved in that membership, and we would love to have you on board. Number two, a big thank you to our sponsors here in the video podcast. We don't do real commercial breaks, so I just want to give them a major shout out on the front end here. We have some discount codes in the show notes that you can take advantage of. Number one, Speedland, of course, the makers of the GS Tam, the shoe that bears the Freetrail logo on it, and a product that we worked on to bring to market in the spring of 2023. Our other annual partner is Gnarly Nutrition, makers of fantastic training and racing nutritional supplements that will really help you on your trail journey. We always have a third partner on the show that rotates throughout the year. So depending on who it is now, you can find a link and a discount code in the show notes for that partner as well. But a big thank you to the sponsors who do make our podcast possible. Number three, last but not least, we would really appreciate it while you're here to smash the subscribe button on the Freetrail YouTube channel. You can also click the bell icon to get notifications whenever we post new content. We are working very hard to keep you inspired, informed, and entertained here in the great sport of trail running. Thank you so much. Enjoy the show. Potentially the most important podcast ever recorded. Ryan Thrower. Bro. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Longtime producer, first time full episode.
And who better to break in the new studio?
Yeah, this is cool. We have the garage door open, good natural light coming in.
Paint the picture for the audience here. It's still bare bones, our future world headquarters here in the garage of my home in Marin County, California. Do you see the potential in this space?
I do, especially with the new hard rock thing that you're going to hang behind you, because normally the camera shoots directly to you, so you see what's behind. This one is unique because it's capturing both of us.
Yeah. So for those who watch on YouTube, you can see the very rudimentary studio that we're recording from. But man, I'm so happy to have this little space here in the crib that we can turn into our new recording studio. And again, who better to break it in than the longtime producer, my good buddy, business partner, Freetrail MVP, RT.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, we got to start with our traditional opening question. What makes you, you?
Oh, yeah. I should have known this was coming. That's a really good question. It's interesting to think about when, you have an elevator pitch of essentially like when you meet somebody and they're like, yeah, so like, what's your deal? Like, what makes you you? And I think I used to instantly say, oh, I'm an ultra runner or I'm a trail runner. Like that's the first thing I was like so excited to talk about. And I think as I've gotten older, I am heavily influenced on the people surrounding me, as well as my environment, like geographically. I'm much happier out west, like whether it's here in Marin or up in Seattle where I live. And I have great people in both places. And so, I would like to think I would be the same person without those people, but I don't think that's true. I have a lot of really, really good friends, good people in my life, good family, So I think my answer to that is like both location and people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because if I were to answer the question, what makes Ryan, I would say you're like a unique relationship builder. That's a skill that you have that's maybe more powerful than other people. In other words, you have an ability to connect with human beings. Has that always been the case?
Oh, thank you. I don't know, honestly. It's kind of unique because I feel like I can go longer than most people without human interaction, especially if I'm out like in the woods, traipsing through the mountains. Like as I'm training for my race coming up, I've been doing like a lot of like 8 to 10 hour solo days, and I love it. And I come home and I don't have this inkling to be like, oh, who wants to like, get a beer? I'm just like, nope. But then I do hit that point where I do really start missing people. I just think it's a little bit longer than most. And so as far as building relationships with people, I think that's something that's changed since I've lived out west, which has been about 9 years.
Is that because you've had to be more outgoing in order to build those relationships? You grew up in Indiana. We'll come around to talking about that, but you moved out west alone.
I did. I knew one person in Seattle, and I thought I was only going to be there a year because I almost signed a lease in San Diego, and I drove the one all the way up. And I was like, well, let me just go up to Seattle and let me think about it. And then I got up there and I was like, I'm here. I might as well just sign a year lease and see what happens. And then I was like, yeah, but then I'm going to go to San Diego. And yeah, it was a couple months into it. And I was like, all right, I'm never leaving. This is heaven.
Yeah.
But I knew one person. And then, I really didn't know anybody in the trail running world for a while, like years, where I just kind of ran alone. But I'm like my coworkers and their friends and kind of branching out. Even my neighbor in my first like apartments. But I think, yeah, I had to. Whereas like in Indiana, I grew up surrounded by just friends through school constantly, where it was like, in school, you're just surrounded by people. Whereas if you're, late 20s and you move across the country and you don't know anybody, it's a lot harder. Where do you meet? Like if I moved right now, I mean, sure, I could meet trail runners, but where would I go to meet people?
Yeah.
It's like, as you get older, it's harder.
Well, I'm just thinking about the night that we met, and we should tell that story again, because I think it is important to the history of Freetrail. And, you've been a massive part of my life and our family's life ever since that night. But like, you made a point to like engage with me that evening. We chatted, we shared a couple brewskis, and then the wheels started turning in my head of like, oh, maybe Ryan would be an interesting guy to, produce the podcast. And let's tell the story in a sec. But, if it weren't for you actively engaging in that situation, our friendship and working relationship would never have started. And I think that's what makes you is like, you were proactively wanting to engage in conversation with a convo guy like me. We hit it off. And I feel like you've done that, though, not only with me, but with so many other people. And I think there's so many people in the world that view you as like one of their best friends. And I think that's like what makes you.
I guess I've never really thought about that. But yeah, thanks for saying that.
Yeah. Anyway, well, give the people a little bit of a glimpse into, your background history. I mentioned Indiana. So give the people a little condensed version of your personal story.
Sure. I grew up in northern Indiana in a small town called Fort Wayne. I had great parents, great sisters, and the rest of my family, like aunts and uncles and grandparents, lived East Coast. So I'm a Phillies fan. Had a great childhood growing up. And then it took me 9 years to get my undergraduate. I went to like 5 different colleges and I kept quitting and didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I was like, I'm just going to go travel for a little bit. And then finally committed to geography, majored in geography, graduated from Indiana University in Indianapolis. And then like within a month or two of graduating, I was like, all right, I got to get out of Indiana. And the company I was working for, I was a bartender through school. They were like, hey, if you want to move to Carolina, you can open this bar as a bar manager. And I was like, it's not really where I want to go, but it gets me out of Indiana and it gets me money. So I was like, I'll give it a go. And then I hated it. So I quit. And then I called my mom and I was like, hey, I think I'm going to like leave Carolina and I think I'm going to drive out west. And she's like, I wondered when I get this phone call. And I was like, what? They knew, my parents knew I just like had to go. And so I put everything I could into the car and lived out of the car for like 3 months, just driving across. And this is where I was starting to get into running. Like, at that time I was driving across the country, listening to Born to Run on audiobook. My buddy Dusty he's like, hey, I think you'd like this. And so
That book was life-changing for me.
Yeah.
Too.
And so I was like, this is wild. And I was just so curious about it. So I was like living out of the car, doing runs like here. And I was like, oh, the place looks cool to run as I'm just driving across like Arizona or something. And then that's like I said, I almost moved to San Diego and I just barely went up to Seattle. I'm glad I did. And took me a couple of years, but I kind of embedded myself in the like amazing trail running community up there and did my first trail races there, signed up for TNF 50 in 2015 without having ever run more than a 5K. So that was, the classic 5K to 50 miler, yes. Which that was my favorite race. I did that 3 times. And then, yeah, I think what kept me there outside of like the beauty and the access that Seattle offers to all the surrounding options was the people. I really made a lot of good friends. And I think honestly, that's what keeps me up there. As much as we joke about like, when am I going to move down here and whatnot? It's not just like, I love the mountains and the trails and all the different places, but I have so many friends that I like really love that I, more than just running friends. Like
community.
Yeah. Community. And
the most important part about where you live. You said like the things that make you were place and relationships. And now hearing you talk a little bit, the other thing that you're so passionate about is travel. So maybe talk about the significance that's played in your life and any, poignant stories from your years on the road.
Yeah. I started where my dad would give me the atlas as I'm sitting in the back seat, and we do a lot of road trips to the East Coast to visit family. And like, I didn't know until way later that he knew where he was going, because he made it seem like, all right, what exit? You got to look at the map and tell me what exit we're getting off to switch to here, to go through Pittsburgh, that's our exit, And so I was like so into it. And I just always loved the road trips. And then as I got older and, could do it on my own, traveled a lot all around, like went up to Maine a handful of times. We have family up there too. And then in 2012 or 2013 was the first time I went abroad. I think it was 2012. I went to Europe for a month and just lost it. I was like head over heels. And since then I've traveled, 10 months at a time, one time, a couple months here and there. And I think it's just curiosity. The same way that I'm curious about like running long distances. I think I just always want to, and I hate the kind of travel where you're like, oh, I'm in Berlin for a day and now I'm in Frankfurt for a day and now I'm in Paris. And then like you're back home and you're like, what city was it? They're all, it blends together. I want to be there. Like I went to Scotland for a month in December back in 2018. It was gloomy. It was moody, like I'm a creature of moods. I loved it, but I felt like I was there because I didn't bop around that much. I was like, I went to Edinburgh and then I went up to the Highlands and I just stayed put. And I like that kind of travel.
So creativity, obviously people who will listen to the show know you as the creative director and the creative force behind everything that we do at Freetrail. Not only all the podcasts, but all the videos. You do a lot of the design and graphic work that we do, 99% of that. Also, you make music. Where did the creative streak come from you too? Because, when we met, like it was such a serendipitous thing because you were shooting races and you were doing some kind of one-off video editing work. I know with Ethan, probably some other stuff, but to me, you were like the most undiscovered talent and you have the most versatile skill set of any creative person I know between audio, video, graphic design, music. Paint the thread of creativity throughout your life.
Yeah. So my dad works in radio and that's where music comes from. Like we listen to music all the time.
Do your radio voice thing for the listeners.
Well, it's 45 degrees outside. Thanks for coming. Thanks for tuning in to, trail culture, trail running radio.
WFAN.
from the garage here in Marin County, California. It is 10:20 a.m. Slightly overcast skies here in Marinwood. Hope your drive to work is going well this morning. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So we listen to music all the time. Like when my dad took me to concerts when I was super young. I remember seeing, like Bush, and we had tickets to see Oasis a bunch of times, but they always canceled the concerts. But Smashing Pumpkins, Foo Fighters, like all of my favorite bands growing up, we'd go. I saw Paul McCartney. It was so music's always been a part of my life. I got a guitar when I was 13 for my birthday, and then me and a bunch of shitty guitar playing seventh graders would get together and just like, oh, let's form a band, and like the worst music of all time. And then music kind of music even before that, it's always kind of been like my love language. Like I'm really expressive both through listening and creating music. And then the visual side of stuff came later. I got really into, like, I worked at an independent movie theater for 5 years in Indiana. And, that's when you had like Wes Anderson films and stuff that was a little bit below the radar back then come through. And, like Science of Sleep. I mean, there were so many cool movies that I was like, this is awesome. I don't know anything about that kind of stuff, but that was where like the love kind of started coming to me for that kind of stuff. And then my friend Gretchen Walla, she's someone who actually connected me with basically everybody I know right now. A dear friend. She was like a race director. I was like, hey, get a camera, come shoot a race. I think you'd like it. And I was like, because I was taking photos of my iPhone at that time, and I was like, I don't know. And I was so nervous. I didn't even charge.
I mean, this is only like what?
2019.
Yeah. So 4 years ago.
Yeah. And so, I hated the first time I did it. I hated it because I didn't know what I was doing. And I don't like doing things when I I want to know everything. Yeah. But I kept doing it, repeating. And then that's when I fell in love with that. And I feel like I've just been winging it ever since. And I think, I don't remember if I was talking to Nick Danielson or another peer in this space where I was like, this is the first year where I've put out stuff where it's been out for a little bit and I'm proud of it. Because when you're new at something, you suck at it and you have to like keep putting out stuff. And then a couple months later, you're like, look at that thing I put out a couple months ago. It was terrible, but you have to do that.
Take it down?
Yeah. Should we take it down? And I'm a couple of years in now and I'm finally like, okay, some of these photos, like even today, we're looking through stuff for the Eli Hemming episode. And I looked at my Broken Arrow photos. I was like, whoa, these actually aren't that bad. And, but it's taken time. So I don't know, maybe that was a little bit of a long-winded answer, but.
Well, I don't know, to drive the point home for the audience, like you're basically a self-taught creative person that can do audio, video, photography, graphic design, and make music.
I don't know about the graphic design.
Well, okay. I mean, but it's not like you're a professional, right? Yeah. If we needed to do like something that was more complex and sophisticated with design, right, we would hire it out. But you do basically everything that we need to do that looks cool, in addition to sounds cool. And, you obviously are a fantastic photographer, but it's something that came into your life sort of later, especially, the podcast recording and filmmaking. I mean, you make feature-length films now and you started in 2019.
Yeah. It's kind of wild.
It's crazy, dude. So again, just to like inform the audience, I know when you and I met, you were doing like 1 day a week doing some editing work with Ethan Newberry, the Ginger Runner. And he's the connective tissue between the two of us, having done an event with Ethan. What was that? Was that just before the pandemic?
Yeah, it was February of 2020.
So February of 2020, maybe I'll tell the story and then you can add whatever color you want to, because it was like a watershed moment in retrospect in both of our lives, I think, and, shout out to Ethan for providing the introduction. But basically what happened was Ethan, myself, Gary Robbins, and Ellie Greenwood put together an event in Seattle where Ethan basically operated as the host of the event. It was sort of a Ginger Runner Presents evening of conversation with Gary, myself, and Ellie. We each gave presentations to a crowd of trail runners. And you were there taking photos and basically just assisting Ethan in hosting the event. And then it was afterwards where we shared a couple brewskis and we had a fun little conversation. And I left feeling like, we had made a new friend. We'd made a connection. Harmony was there too. And the next day, this is when we were living in Portland, Harmony and I were driving home from Seattle after spending the night and started just talking about my podcast, which was relatively new at the time, maybe a couple months old. And we were unhappy with the production crew that was taking care of the show because, unlike you, I have no creative talent and could not produce my own podcast if I needed to. But I knew that I loved what I was doing. Like, I felt there was some sort of momentum behind the show and I was enjoying the process of putting it together, but I felt like I needed like the right partner to do the hard part of it, which is your job. And in conversation with Harmony while we were driving home, I said, that guy Ryan from last night, like, I wonder if he could do the podcast, because I was like, okay, he's helping Ethan. He probably would enjoy like some extra work in the creative space in trail running. Like, maybe he's got time and he'd be interested in it. So I sent a note and Harmony agreed. We sent a note to Ethan saying, hey, can you send me like Ryan's contact? Do you think he'd be interested in this? He said, yeah, probably. Just hit him up. Here's his number or whatever. And the rest is history, as they say. Even though you had zero experience producing any podcasts, just like everything else we've done, you said, yes, we'll figure it out.
Yep.
And we did.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that story?
Well, I think that's the theme of so many things where it's like, hey, should we do this? And I'm like, yep, we'll figure it out, but I have no idea how to do it, but we'll figure it out as we go. Yeah. I remember that night chatting. We were at a brewery. It was basically Ellie, Gary, Kim and Ethan, you and Harmony and me.
Yeah.
And, I just remember we bonded a ton over Marin, and that was just a really fun night. I remember Gary was talking a ton about hockey, and I remember laughing a bunch because I don't really know much about hockey, but that was really fun. And then I was like, I remember when you called me and you're like, do you want to produce the pod? I was like, yes. I need disclaimer. I have no idea what I'm doing, but yes, I'll figure it out.
But it was perfect. And I mean, just to give the audience a sense of our working relationship and how it's evolved is like, you basically will sacrifice anything for what we do. And it started with the podcast. Before it was like, okay, with the old production crew that I had, it's like, okay, we need the show like a week early or whatever. With you, it's like, okay, like I'll turn it around in 5 minutes. It'll be up and published like within seconds of finishing. And anyway, just like you always have put our working relationship at the center of everything. And I think that's why, like, I've always just trusted implicitly that like frickin' we're in this together, and we've been through some wars, both, interpersonally, which maybe we can talk about a few times where we've resented each other. But for the most part, man, it's been like, it's created a bond, I think, between the two of us that will be impossible to break.
Yeah, it's funny. Whenever we're up against like a crazy deadline, whether like it was delivering the videos for Hoka or there was something even more recent than that, I think. And I was just like, it's all good. It's even though we have like 48 hours to I haven't started this video, we'll get it done.
Yeah.
I do think the times where I think it's like 95% of the time, if not 99% of the time, it's like really, really good. But we go through, obviously, building a business is very stressful, and it's a lot of in the unknown, in choppy seas, if you will. And I do think those times where it's like been like once a year kind of where it's just a lack of communication. We start resenting each other because both
it's usually
misunderstood.
It's usually like either I'm overwhelmed or you're overwhelmed.
Or
and
both.
when we both get overwhelmed, that's when we're like, we start to bicker or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's every sort of business partnership goes through that type of stuff. But I don't think you've ever questioned for a second how dedicated and committed I am, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And I think that's created a loyalty with our small team, Harmony 2, and everybody else who contributes to Freetrail. Like, we do have a sense of like very strong team camaraderie. And I think it's born out of the fact that, like, we've been able to put together a team that like really cares about what we're doing. And so I appreciate, the work ethic that you've always shown. You grind harder than anybody, but also like, I've never once questioned your loyalty to building this thing together, even though like we've all made huge sacrifices, and, it's been massively difficult. So maybe like, let's talk about some of the learnings, because most of the listeners will know this podcast started out as The Well. And then it was sort of like, as I was understanding like the versatility that you had and the skill set that you had, when we started thinking like, maybe we could do other stuff, it doesn't need to just be a podcast. And then we sort of had the opportunity to start the app, which, was definitely a learning experience and a mistake. And now we've sort of arrived at, I think, all of us feeling more comfortable with who we are and what we are and what we want to do and what impact we want to have. Is there anything you want to say about that evolution from The Well to Freetrail?
Yeah, it's funny to think about all the mistakes that we've made, especially through the Pillars era. But we've learned so much from them. I wouldn't trade them. I know sometimes you're just kind of like, oh man, I wish we wouldn't have done that. But I'm a huge believer that we wouldn't be where we are today without all those mistakes. And if we would have done something, it could have been different, whatever it was. I'm happy with where we're at today and where we're going. But yeah, the Pillars, from The Well to Pillars to Freetrail. I mean, Freetrail, when we changed to Freetrail, that's when I was like excited. Yeah. I'm excited to like have a shirt that says Freetrail, to like tell people about it. With Pillars, it never really clicked. It was like the idea's there, but our execution's not quite right, or something like that.
Brand wasn't right. I think we all felt that, of like, we're onto something here, but like there's something wrong with the way that things are structured and the way that we present ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we switched to Freetrail, and I was like,
dude,
this is cool.
All right. So we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of you creating the brand.
Oh yeah, UTMB.
So talk about the rebrand thing, because this was an all-consuming project for like 9 months, and we had such a hard time trying to figure out what we wanted our name to be, what we wanted the brand to look like. And it was at UTMB 2021 when you created the Freetrail brand.
Yeah, it was. Well, we had been talking about, we'd be on like road trips down to, Southern California, like when you were doing Joshua Tree or Backbone FKTs, and it's quiet in the car for a while, and someone would just be like, what about, and say it with some name, and we're like, and someone would shoot it down, or somebody'd like it or whatever. And we just kept saying names, like, because pretty early on, we were like, it's not Pillars, but yeah, we have to figure it out. We have one chance to rebrand. We can't rebrand after this. So we gotta like the name. Yeah. And then I think it was down to Freetrail and one other one. And what made it stick was we were on an office hours call, which was like 8 or 9 p.m. UTMB time, which is the normal time here, 11:30. And I was sitting across the table from you and Harmony on the same call, but I was like messing around with graphics in Adobe. And then I think what made it stick was I sent it to you. I remember it was like green.
Yeah.
And I was like,
it's like turquoise.
Freetrail with the signpost sign. And that's when it like kind of clicked. We're like, wait a minute, the name with the logo, this could be cool.
Yeah. And the signpost looks like an F.
Yeah.
Because like Freetrail, it's like the way that, so the great part about it was that I came up with the name, you made the branding, and then Harmony sort of arrived at the color scheme that we use, which I think is also like perfect. And for my part of it, like, it was like, okay, well, we want to make sure that it's obvious we're a trail running media company, because obviously with Pillars, that was not the case.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, we want the word trail in it. What other word could we have? And it's like, okay, what kind of words are associated with like the feeling of trail running? And obviously one of those feelings was like freedom, right? So it's like, well, what about free trail? And it's like, okay, it's like maybe it's like kind of generic, whatever. But in the whole rebranding process, I mean, we spent thousands of dollars on just trademark database searches with our trademark lawyer. And then finally, Freetrail. There used to be a snowshoe company called Freetrail that has since, gone out of business, I think like back in the 80s. So we knew
it had a sweet logo.
It had a fire brand.
Yeah.
But we knew we could own the name, right? And then I bought the URL, which was also very expensive. But anyway, it was that night at UTMB when you designed the branding, when all three of us were like, that's it. That is it. And now, like you, I got my trail culture tee on right now, and I just feel so proud to wear the brand. And it feels like it's become a core part of both of us. I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. And the signpost, dude, it's just brilliant. So anything else you want to say about the evolution of what we've done and sort of arriving at the moment that we're at? Because I think for me, and I say this to a lot of people I talk to about Freetrail, just like, man, I'm so proud of what we've done, but it's so hard for us to pick our head up and see how far we've come, because it still feels like we still have so far to go and that we're not even close to getting out of the woods and truly figuring this thing out.
Yeah. I equate it to, I see Rhodes every 2 weeks, and every time I see him, he's saying a few more words, or he's getting closer to walking. He's standing up on his own kind of thing. But when you're in the day to day, you don't notice the changes as much. If you see him every day.
Yeah.
And with Freetrail, we're in it every day to, just 24/7. Don't see necessarily the growth unless you pull back. So it's kind of hard sometimes when we're because there's been lots of times where it's just what are we doing? Does anybody care? Is anybody out there? Is it just us? What's going on? Because we're so just in our own little worlds of just work, do this. And so I do think that, especially at races, when either you see a pair of Speedland shoes with our logo on it, or you see somebody wearing a trail culture hoodie, or just someone comes up to you and is like, oh, I love the pod, or what, and you just have more of, oh, maybe there are people that are out there listening to us and like what we do. And, which I guess it's just as our own insecurity of just what are we doing? But like I said, with my work, where this year has come kind of oh, I'm kind of starting to put out stuff I'm proud of. Still not quite putting out the stuff I want to put out, but I'm on my way of learning how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I feel about Freetrail, where it's wow, we've actually done a lot, and the community's growing. It's really, really fun in Slack, and our website. We have a real website, which is insane. Every now and then I kind of forget that that's ours, and how cool. I'm really into fantasy baseball, and we've talked for years about doing fantasy trail running, and so it's really cool that Travis nailed the execution of that, which is really fun. I wish there was more. I want to do it all the time, but yeah, it's like you said, it's when we can take our head up and take a step back and see what's going on. It's pretty cool. I'm pretty proud of us.
Of all the things that you've produced between, the Pillars and Freetrail days, what's the thing you're proudest of?
I'm a sucker for Begin Again, because it was my first longer film. It's 45 minutes or something. And Peak Life Experience is somewhere around 30. That's the Hard Rock one. But Begin Again was, that whole thing was such a, it was wild, dude. We went 11-hour time difference. We flew 20 something hours across the world. And then last minute, they're like, oh, if you want to make a film, you have to run a marathon to me. And I was like, what? Like, yeah, you have to go into the circ and go do this. He's like, otherwise you won't have enough footage. And so I was like, okay. And like that whole process. And then, we used that film to launch Freetrail, the switch from Pillars to Freetrail.
Right.
So, and we had a showing at Seven Hills Running Shop in Seattle. So I think that's, even though I look back, I watch it now and I'm like, oh man, I could have just spent a few more, this and that and like really tweak this, or I could have filmed this differently. I'm still like, I got a soft spot for it. And I think that when we release the Adam Mary film for Western States, I think that's going to be my new thing, because if I can figure out how to tell the story, because honestly, man, like I know I'm kind of going off a little tangent here, but every time I sit down to make a film, I'm like, how the bleep am I going to do this? It's not like you do it once. And you're like, oh, it's like cookie cutter. I'm not going to do this. Like I sit down, I'm like, this is where I realize that I don't know what I'm doing and we're not going to put it out because I don't know. And so that's kind of what I feel like with that, because the Adam Mary film it's a good story. I have good footage. I've gone through a lot of it and I'm excited to like attempt to put it together. But at the same time, I'm just like, it's an important story and I don't want to cuss it up.
Yeah.
So, but I think that one, I like that challenge. And honestly, I think the Hard Rock film, even if it's like a 10-minute film, is going to be cool. Cause I looked through some of Rich's GoPro footage and it's good.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell the people about our sort of tongue-in-cheek title for the new Hard Rock film.
So Begin Again, which is the film about Grand Raid that I was just referencing, which was my favorite, is, about how you kind of had like a minor heat stroke in the middle of the race and blew up and then hiked it in, essentially, even though you still came in 17th out of 3,000. Pretty impressive. So we were thinking Begin Again 2, Implode Harder.
Like an action film.
Which would completely ruin if the film is like at all serious or like has a good note to it or whatever, but it's such a funny title.
I'm sick of making videos about me exploding and marching it in. We're done doing that. Yeah. We are done doing that. Between filmmaking, photography, like music making, I'm sure it's not podcast producing, but of those things, where do you feel strongest, or what do you enjoy the most?
I used to like cut and dry, easiest answer in the world would be photography. Now I'm starting to lean more towards film. And I think it's because I'm slowly starting to learn how to do it and I feel more comfortable with it. Yeah. Or it's maybe a little bit more of a challenge. Not that photography is not a challenge, because everybody's a good photographer these days. Music is interesting because I feel like I don't work super great by myself in music. I have like 500 songs and most of them are like 70% complete. I have, maybe 40 songs that are complete.
Dude, we got to put out an album.
I know we got to put out an album, but it's much more fun when you're working with somebody and in anything, but for me, music, where you're like someone's on the piano, you're on the guitar, or vice versa, or somebody's on, and you play something together and you both all of a sudden look at each other and you're like, that was cool, or that was special. Having that moment in music, like that's what I love. That's why I like doing music. I'm more of I like working together.
We have those moments though too.
We do.
When we work on stuff.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, this is it.
Yeah, this is it.
Oh, we got it.
Yeah. So
interesting.
But that's where I feel like photography is, obviously that's like a one-person thing. And then filmmaking for now has always been a one-person thing. Like occasionally somebody will help with like a pacer will help with GoPro, or Tony with the Sony will give me like a footage from an aid station I wasn't at or something. But it's, hopefully eventually we'll be able to finance a film where I can hire other shooters, and I don't even know what we need because I don't know, I'm just doing it all. But yeah, I think now my long answer short is they're a lot closer between film and photography right now. And it depends on the situation.
Who do you view as like some of your inspirations creatively? Like, cause again, you're fairly new to this whole thing and you've learned basically on your own, but I bet there's media outside of maybe the sport of trail running or things that you listen to that maybe inspire some of the creative direction that you take. Is there anything there that you want to talk about?
I think Christopher Nolan is probably my favorite filmmaker.
Dude, I just listened to a podcast about him.
He's brilliant.
So he just put out Oppenheimer. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it yet.
Neither have I. We should go see it.
Oh, we should. Yeah.
After your race. Say more.
Yeah. Interstellar.
That film. Oh my
All-timer.
God. I watched it on a plane.
Oh, geez.
Just weeping.
Yeah. Yeah. That one, obviously the Dark Knight series is awesome, or Dark Knight trilogy. And I really liked Inception. I thought Tenet was good too. I thought that was creative. Dunkirk. My goal is to create a Dunkirk. I want to make like my trail running version of Dunkirk. Obviously take the war out of it, but I mean, it starts in Act 3. And I have a couple ideas for stuff like that. But prior to him, I really liked the older Wes Anderson movies. Now I'm kind of like irritated by the new Wes Anderson movies. I don't even want to see them because it's like there's 40 people in them. There's too many stories going on. And he's like out Wes Anderson himself somehow. But I thought Life Aquatic and Darjeeling Limited and Royal Tenenbaums, those like older films, I think one thing I really want to get better at is incorporating like an audio experience. I want while you're watching one of our films. I want it to be like
one of the things that you're best at is the music in films.
Yeah.
And people say that, or comment on our YouTube videos. It's like,
I do get a lot. Yeah. A lot of people ask what song is that or whatever. Yeah. But I think blending all the different sounds of environment with music and doing it better than what I'm doing now. That's like what I want to keep pursuing. I think that's like, I want to be able to make a film and be like, please watch this with headphones. Like, don't use your computer speakers, your iPhone, like please, like, so you get the full experience.
Interesting. You said you want to make the trail running version of Dunkirk. And it reminds me of the time that we tried to make the trail running version of Drive to Survive, Netflix series.
Too soon.
But this is maybe a good opportunity for us to talk about our brotherly working relationship and the ups and downs that we've had. And we've really only had a couple downs.
Yeah. 2 or 3.
But that was one of them for sure. And it was a point where we were following our instinct, which we always have, both to our benefit and to our detriment. And I had become obsessed with the Formula One series on Netflix of just like not only the exposition of the competition, but more so the behind the scenes, the feeling like you're developing a relationship with the athlete and getting a 360-degree understanding of their personal lives and their professional lives. And, I still think there's a massive opportunity to do something like this in trail running. And you and I, being the ambitious and inexperienced people that we are, trying to build something from scratch, decided that more or less you were going to be taking on a massive, massive project. And it ended up being, I think we characterize it as a learning experience, but a failure.
Yeah.
And it nearly killed you. So talk about it.
Well, first of all, I've never seen Drive to Survive, so there's that. But I understand the concept, and it's just immersing myself with Tim Tollefson for a lot of spring of 2022 as he was preparing for Western States. And then I learned so many things from that, and I'm so glad we did that and failed at it because I learned a ton. And that was a project that we needed way more than one person doing it. And, we could have made something completely different and it could have been cool, but I have so much footage from, so I filmed, it was like, we went straight from our first gorge, which nearly killed us because it was like 18-hour days, to then I went to Mammoth for like a few days, to then I went to Madeira for 2 weeks. Then I went back to Mammoth for a long time. And then I went to like a family reunion in New Jersey and the Jersey Shore in South Jersey. And I remember we talked on the phone because we had so much like disconnect, misunderstood each other, just not even communicating. And we talked on the phone. Instantly, I just exploded in tears. And I mean, after that conversation, I had such like a relief because I was also training for Bighorn, which was in like 5 days. You know, in between filming Tim, like Tim goes to work at the hospital and I'm like, all right, I got to get a 4 or 5 hour run in while he's doing, you know, it's just like is nonstop. And I remember his just like tapering in New Jersey on this like 5-day family like get together. And we had this conversation because we're like, all right, we just need to talk because you're mad at me and I'm mad at you. And like, let's figure this out.
Yeah.
And I was so stressed out about, I don't know how I'm going to edit these episodes because they take so long to edit. And I think we had released 1 at that time, but I wasn't going to have episode 2 ready, or the draft I sent to 2 wasn't really good or something.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the like 2 or 3 times we've had those moments where it's just like, I always explode into tears and just like need that release. But I think that's why we're so close. Is like we've worked through those like hard moments and we've bonded a lot deeper because of those moments. But man, was that a learning experience.
But I think it's illustrative of the attitude that we've had. Is like, this should exist. We're doing it. We don't have a sponsor. Who cares?
Yeah.
We're doing it
on our own dime.
We're doing it on our own dime. You know, at a time when we're struggling, nobody's got energy. We're all making sacrifices, but like this should exist. And we want to be the people that do it. Yeah. And shout out to Tim Tollefson, who, you know, did accommodate you for,
I live with him
for weeks that spring, only to have it to where like the film sort of like crashed and burned. And we did put out 2 good episodes. I was happy with those. Yeah, episodes. Those are great episodes, but we never kind of brought the story full circle. And maybe someday we will.
Yeah. Cliffhanger for now. Cliffhanger.
But, yeah, like, I don't know. I still want us to do that, but it was a great learning experience of like, okay, how do we be a little bit more efficient?
Yeah.
Like, and how do we do things that are a little bit more in our realm of competence and capability as we iterate towards being able to do some of these humongous projects that I think inspire both of us deeply. The last conflict we had was in April of this year, where steps from where we're sitting now in our living room, you, me, and Harmony were like, okay, we need to sit down and just hash this out, clear the air. And it was me who burst into tears in that one.
Yeah, the tables turned.
The tables turned. But man, like that's life, man. That's what makes rich experience, I guess. Is like, I don't know. I just feel such a deep gratitude for you and Harmony going on this ride with me. And like, I just feel such a big responsibility of like, I need this to work for these guys. Like I know Ryan has killed himself on Freetrail and sacrificed a lot and could be making more money working for somebody else, doing something else. And like, you've always been there, you know? And that's why I just like feel such an immense amount of loyalty towards you and like such gratitude for being on this journey together.
Well,
and
likewise.
Even when we're crying on the phone or in person because we're dealing with some existential crisis, man, I would frickin' do anything for you and I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. So
likewise. I mean, you're the main character in your film and I'm the main character in mine. And I feel that same way towards you. Like, you know, I gotta get this film done. I got to figure out how to do this to keep Freetrail going. Like I think we both put a ton of pressure on ourselves.
Totally.
So,
so you got a race coming up. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I just like Jacob, the race director. I'm running Swiss Alps 100. He's in this thing right now of like every day for a week, he sends out 2 emails. And every time they hit my inbox, it's just like butterflies and anxiety. And I'm antsy. And yeah, I'm ready to get going. I don't know if I'm like what's going to happen physically, but mentally I'm ready. And yeah, I was originally on the wait list for Cascade Crest, which I've run 1.7 times. And I thought I was going to do that this year. And then when I was out actually filming in Leadville, filming that Annie video we did for Hoka before Canyons, I got a beer with my buddy Kevin Schmidt. And like one of the first things we talked about was he just like turned his phone around. He's like, look, this is the race I signed up for. It's like, oh yeah, that looks pretty cool. Yeah. It's like called Swiss Alps 100. I was like, oh, that's cool. He's like, you should do it. I was like, there's no chance I'm doing it. I said, because he's like, yeah, it's August 11th. And I was like, dude, there's no way. I'd have to be gone for a month. I'm not going to be able to go there and fly back.
UTMB. Yeah.
Yeah. And I said, absolutely not. And we had a couple beers, chatted, and then I flew home the next day or whatever. And then like 3 days later, he texts me and he goes, hey, I told Courtney you're coming. She's going to be so disappointed if you don't come. And I was like, what, dude? I said I wasn't going to do it. There's no ways. I got Cascade Crest. I'm moving up on the wait list. And I kept doing like, oh, I'm curious. Let me just like look a little bit about this race. I was like, wow. And also, I've already done Cascade Crest. And then when I went to Austria for Worlds and I was like in the Alps, I know it's not the same part of the Alps, but it's pretty dang close. I was like, okay, this is some of the most unbelievably, like, this is the most beautiful place I've ever been. Like the mountains just go on forever. The trails, you'd never want to stop. You're just like, I want to turn the corner and see what's around it. That's when I was just like, okay, I think I'm going to do this. And that's when I was like, yo, Debo, are you cool with me going? I'm going to be gone and do this thing. And you're like, yeah, absolutely. And then I was looking at the course online because they also have 100K. I was like, oh, maybe I'll do the 100K. That sounds so much better. 100 miles is so far. And I was looking, I was like, oh, but the course, you miss out on this part. And I was like, okay, well, good. Then I'm doing the 160K. And that's the excitement you want to have going into the race of just like, totally. I want to see every little spot on this course. And so, yeah, I've done a hodgepodge of training in between shooting like Broken Arrow, Western States, Worlds, Hard Rock.
Yeah.
So
you've been on the road for months.
Yeah.
You've spent like a week at a stretch at home, it feels like.
It's been
6 months.
Honestly, because I also went to Maine and I visited my family in Indiana. I got 3 nephews. Well, obviously, and
4.
Parents. 4 with, well, yeah, but my 4th lives here in this house. Right. So it's interesting. That's kind of how my Bighorn training was last year. It's like I get it in when I can.
Yeah.
And like right after Western States, I got home and I had 2 days at home before I flew to Chicago. And I said, okay, I'm going to go do 10 hours in Teanaway, which is a little mountain range area. Well, it's not its own mountain range. It's this area in Washington, like 2 hours from Seattle. And it mimics the course pretty well. It's like maybe 1,000 feet or 2,000 feet lower, but it was like 10 hours, hike all the ups. I did 12 or 13,000 feet of climbing, 30 miles or so. And I was like, that's about my pace. I'm shooting for, I'm a mid packer. I'm shooting for like 32 to 36 hours. We'll see how it goes. But physically, I think I'm ready. Mentally, I'm definitely ready. My only concern is like, I have this like lingering, it's not an injury, but it's my ankle. And
that's an injury, dude.
Yeah, it's an injury.
Yeah.
But it's like all my training days, it's been fine. It's been a little tender here and there, like after training, but it's never hurt me during training. But it was for my roll in Japan back in December when we were there.
Should we talk about the spreadsheets? You mentioned Kevin Schmidt, who listeners may know is Courtney DeWalter's husband. So you're doing it with your homie, Kevin. You guys are planning to kind of run together.
Try to run together.
Courtney on this podcast talked about Kevin's spreadsheet acumen. So I don't think we would be divulging secrets.
Yeah.
If you want, because she's never seen the spreadsheet, but you have. Say a few words about Kevin, his organizational skills, and his competence using Microsoft Excel.
He's a genius. He's a wizard. It's beautiful. Amazing. I mean, he has not only just like pace estimations and how much climbing you've done so far, how much descent you've done, how far to the next aid station, those kinds of things. But he also has like took information off the website with like the course profile, where you can have crew and whatnot, what food's going to be at what aid station, the weather, driving directions. Like, it's amazing. I would never have done anything like this. And I showed Addie, who's going to crew for me. And I was like, this is amazing. I need to follow this the best I can, especially with nutrition, because I'm notoriously like not hungry when I'm running. And this race, I'm like, I'm in Europe. I want to eat baguettes and croissants, and there's hot dogs at mile 50. I want to eat hot dogs. That's a terrible idea. I'm going to regret that within 5 miles, but I'm doing it because I want the experience of just like, I want to eat all the stuff they have. I want to have an espresso, I would just I want to go for a long day. And it'll be really fun to run together as long as we're both feeling good,
Yeah. And then Courtney tags in with Kevin, and
Courtney does like 50 miles or whatever. Actually, Tim Tolson's supposed to pace me. So, we'll see, but he's at least coming over to crew. So that'll be fun.
That's fantastic. Amazing. Wish I could be there for you, buddy. What else should we talk about? This is maybe the first and only time I've had zero outline, zero notes. I mean, I feel like we probably could go like several hours just recounting stories, but maybe we can start winding down here. Maybe we could tease because we've talked multiple times here in the last hour about like big projects we've taken on, and UTMB is going to be another one of these things where it's just like a big new thing that we've never done before, but we think it's going to be okay. Maybe you could just give the listeners a general expectation of what they can expect to see, or should we save that for later?
Yeah, let's save it.
Okay.
I'm excited about it, and I think it's going to be really fun. And me and cliffhangers. There's no episode 3 of the Tim Tollefson series, so I guess we'll do another cliffhanger here. Is stay tuned to see what we're doing at UTMB.
All right, well then let's wind down in the traditional way with the uniform questions that I like to present to our guests here on the podcast. Mr. Ryan Thrower, who is one person that you admire inside or outside of sport? Can be living or dead. So why do you admire that person? I
thought about this yesterday on my run. Gretchen Walla. And I don't know if you've ever met Gretchen.
I haven't.
Gretchen, is essentially, I went from having no friends in Washington, or like just like my few like coworkers or whatever, no like trail running friends. So then all of a sudden I felt like I met her and I had endless. So she's taught me so much. She taught me how to be a good listener, just by example. She's not like sitting me down, giving me lessons on how to be, but she's very kind. She always follows her heart. She's encouraged me to, be a better person. She's the one that told me to pick up a camera. Like when we've had, like if we talk on the phone, it's like, she's one of the few people I love talking on the phone, and we can talk for 5 hours. And I'm like, did 5 minutes go by?
Yeah.
So she was a race director.
Doesn't she live in Bellingham?
Yeah, she lives in Bellingham. And now she has her own company called Walla Trails. Shout out. If you're looking for a race, a lot of them are timed loop races. There's no better races for community.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yep. Walla Trails. She's just been, such a positive influence on me through the years, and has introduced me to a lot of my best friends. She's the reason I knew Ethan, who introduced me to you essentially.
Oh.
Ben, like there's just Chrissy, there's just so many people. I could just list so many people. And
Have you guys communicated about the fact that she's the one who convinced you to pick up a camera?
Yeah, I've told her that before. Yeah. I think she would push back on that and just be like, because I say like she's the reason I'm like doing any of the things I'm doing, and she'd push back as maybe just take credit to be like a little bit of a catalyst, but I'm giving her all the credit.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, she's just, I mean, I'm not like being very articulate right now. I feel like I just need to get the point across that she is just such a wonderful human being, and everyone that knows her is better for it. And they would all say that. Like,
amazing.
Yeah. And when you go to her races, all the people that are there are the people you want to know. Like as I get older, I find myself like the friends that I like keep and like reach out to, and they reach out to me. Like the friends I'm in investing more time in are maybe, well, I don't really know. They're just like good people, and Gretchen's connected me with a lot of them. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Gretchen Walla.
Gretchen Walla.
I guess final question for you here, Rye. What is one truth that you've learned about life or about yourself through your participation in trail running or through your evolution as an artist?
The fragility of life, man. I think about it all the time. And, especially now that I'm in my late 30s, it's, you start to realize like your parents are getting older. And you see like you're not in the younger generation anymore in anything, not just the sport. But I also live in Ballard right next to like an old folks home. And, on my walk to get coffee every day down at Ballard Coffee Works, you just always see like people that are kind of on the tail end, and it just puts things in perspective. And the more I see those things and you have this revelation, it's just, man, life. Like I yelled this line to you. It's a Frank Ocean line. I yelled this to you at Hard Rock. I go, one solar flare, we're consumed. So why not? It's just like, it could be over, man. So I just try to be grateful. I try to be present. That's why I always yell, stay present. Like I just try to, because I've always thought like when I'm in a race and I'm like, I don't want to be doing this anymore. This is the stupidest sport, which I always think, late in the race or whatever. I think, what if I was 80 years old and I had a wish and I got to come back to any moment and it just put me in this moment?
Yeah.
How grateful I would be to be like, okay, I'm 36 again and I'm at mile 82 and I have 18 miles to go, or I'm on this run in the PCT and I'm just having the time of my life out here, even though I'm like dehydrated and a little sore. And it's just like carrying that like gratitude for all the little moments, even the mundane ones, even the ones. Yeah. This is a small tangent too, but there's a film called About Time and it's unbelievable. It's one of the best movies I've seen in the last 10 years.
Documentary is it a documentary or what is it?
No, it's just a movie with a little bit of time travel. And like, there's this part where he lives the same day twice. And the first time it shows him going through and he's irritated in line for coffee and like annoyed by this little thing and annoyed by that. And then when he goes back and lives that same day and tries to live it exactly through, he sees all the beauty in the little moments. And like, that's what I'm trying to say is like, that's what I'm trying to hold on to is all the little things. I try to be present. I try not to always be thinking of something in the past or like be excited for a trip. I'm excited for Europe. I fly Monday, so I'm not going to enjoy anything until then because I'm so excited for that. It's like, well, dude, I'm in Marin right now. I'm going to go for a run. Yeah. Like, so I guess this is a very long, if you've listened to trail running radio, I go on lots of long-winded tangents. This is just another one of them. But yeah, I think specifically through trail running, it's really hit home just the fragility of life. I mean, go to a golden hour at any race. It's just, man.
What a great place to end. Impermanence.
Yeah.
the fragility of life and everything else. And it is so hard to maintain mindfulness and presence. And I think like this is one of the areas where free trails actually made me like a worse, less happy person, is like because I'm always so consumed with like the future and like how we're going to make things work.
Yeah.
That it really, I think, is to the detriment of like my day-to-day enjoyment of the stuff that we work on. And it's something that Harmony reminds me of all the time. She's like, come on, we live back in Marin. Like we're on our way. We're making progress. Like just be present with where we are and enjoy the process and we'll figure it out. And it applies to sport just as much as it does to life. So thanks for the reminder, RT. Dude, we just recorded a podcast.
Yeah. I don't feel like I was super eloquent because I, get the wheels going and then I can't really. But anyways, it was really fun. I'm glad we did this.
Super fun. We'll have to do it again. We'll make it an annual tradition here in the new studio. And then we can document the process of bringing the space to life. How's that sound?
Yeah.
I love you, bro.
Love you too.
Thanks for coming on.